New York City, the city of life, the city of opportunity, the city that never sleeps. Home to over 8 million people, New York City has it all. As I recall the trip I took there when I was 10, one of my most vivid recollections was not the beauty of it all, or the scenery, or even the smell, but it was the ads and their deceptions. What seemed like one of the least significant things in New York City, the ads had a lasting impact on me. When I visited Times Square, I stood there in awe, looking up at all the lights like a kid in a candy shop. As I turned to my right, I saw a model with a bottle of perfume with a French name I couldn't pronounce. And as I turned to my left, I saw a model with some fancy clothes and a huge smile on his face. And at that very moment, I realized what I was going to do for the rest of my life. I finally knew what would be pictured below my name when someone typed it into Google. Model. Yep, that's right, model. At 10 years old, I had found my purpose, to walk down that runway strutting my stuff like Kendall Jenner. And so, like the average 10-year-old, I realized that in order to become this world-renowned model, I was going to need some photo shoot practice. So, while practicing my model walk, I walked back to the hotel, went back in the bathroom, and looked directly into the mirror. And the very moment I looked into that mirror, I realized I could never be a model. Not because I didn't have the ability to do so, or the model walk, but because my body wouldn't be looked at as model-worthy. I wouldn't be seen as appealing or attractive, and therefore, my dreams were obscure and naive. Because when I looked into that mirror, I didn't see a Kendall Jenner looking back at me. Instead, I saw someone who was overweight, insecure, and imperfect. And for the first time in my life, I felt self-conscious about my body. And I had the world to blame for that, because it's no secret. The world isn't all sprinkles and rainbows. I'm spending most of my life preparing to enter the real world, being told by superiors that I'm not ready, or the world isn't always fair. But unlike what anyone could have ever expected, the world doesn't just give us a bad perception of life, it gives us a bad perception of our body and what it should look like. And unfortunately, that's exactly what I've come to learn. And that's also what I'm most worried about for the youth of America. That their innocence and their happiness is stripped away from them because they fall victim to the world's influence. The world creates insecurities for us by advocating that we change ourselves, by promoting those who look better, by lying to us, and by expecting that we look just like everyone else. For example, let's take skincare products. Almost everyone uses them. But why? Isn't acne normal? Aren't wrinkles normal? Aren't flaws normal? We look at what we want to see and what we want to look like, and are told that to be like them and to look just like them, we just have to use this product every day. Skincare companies feed off our insecurities like a parasite until there's nothing left but the bones and the memories of someone who was once happy in their own body. They take our bodies and demean them just to fill their pockets. But whether we realize it or not, skincare companies aren't the only things that make us insecure. Things we do every day, although insignificant and small, all contribute to a larger cause, body insecurity. If you're like me, or one of the millions of those with social media, what's one of the first things you do in the morning? Perhaps check Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is you have, and what do you see as you scroll through these apps? News, funny posts, pictures from friends and family. But there is a whole other side of social media that specifically targets kids in an attempt to feed off their insecurities. As kids scroll through social media, they stumble upon pictures of famous people or those considered influencers, and each and every one of these posts give an incorrect perception of the real world. As I scroll through social media, I see pictures of men and women with six-packs and the perfect bodies, but look around. Does that seem like the real world? Kids see these role models and see the way that they need to become more like these role models, to look more like them. This leaves them feeling alone, hidden, in a world of darkness where their only goal is to change their body. But whether we try to seclude ourselves from the real world or not, being the victim of one of these body-shaming schemes is inevitable. We're bound to feel insecure at some point just by going out in public, scrolling through social media, or by turning on our TVs. Let me ask you, how many famous overweight actors have you heard of? Actresses? Musicians? Directors? Heck, we can name hundreds of people in Hollywood, but how many of them don't match the idea of the perfect body? A couple? From a young age, we're shown and we're told that those who are successful in life and those who are prosperous in life need and have to look, act, walk, and talk this certain way. And when we fail to be just like them, we're told that no one's perfect and we shouldn't change ourselves to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. Although that phrase is one of the most correct things you will ever hear, it happens to be one of the most contradictory things to ever sweep this earth. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect, I'm told by teachers, adults, and friends when I make a mistake. But although that phrase is so true, it doesn't stop us from changing ourselves. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect, I would tell myself as I crunched over a scale looking down at the number displayed across the screen. Nobody's perfect, I would tell myself as I put on shoes to go for a run to burn calories. Nobody's perfect, I would tell myself as I stared down at my food, contemplating whether or not to eat it, even though I so desperately wanted to. Nobody's perfect, I would tell myself as I sat alone in my room crying because I hated my body. Nobody's perfect. Even though that phrase speaks truth beyond meaning, it doesn't stop us from changing ourselves. Because what that phrase insinuates and implies that because no one's perfect, we shouldn't change ourselves. Society still pressures us to change our bodies. So discreetly and so sneakily, society leads us to insecurities without us even realizing it or thinking much of it. But why do we conform? The most imperative question that we have to ask ourselves is, why do we want and feel the need to adapt? And the answer to that question is that we change to fit expectations. Expectations. Society expects us to look a certain way, just like society expects us to not walk a cat in a leash or wear a tutu for no reason. Society expects us to. We have this pathological and subconscious need to be what people expect us to be and to fit their expectations, which only adds gasoline to the fire burning within us. But how do we extinguish this fire burning within us, ripping down our walls with no end in sight? How do we overcome these challenges? And the answer to such a vast and vague question is as simple as appreciating what we have and what we are. Like Teddy Roosevelt said, comparison is the thief of joy. And he could not be more correct, because the very second that I take my body and compare it to each and every part of that of another is the second that I start to feel insecure and frankly bad. I start to point out the fact that I don't look like what I think beauty looks like, when there is no right or wrong when it comes to beauty. Just because I might have thicker thighs or a larger stomach, that doesn't mean I'm not beautiful or valid. What's on the inside is what counts. What's on the outside is irrelevant and insignificant, because how we look doesn't define us, and it never will. And that's simply all I had to tell myself when I faced challenges like insecurities. And instead of the old, cliche, nobody's perfect motto, I've adapted one for myself. I'm amazing the way I am, and that will never change. What's unique about me is what makes me so amazing. And after time and time again of telling myself this, I start to really understand and appreciate its words. I start to feel its truth on a deeper level. And eventually, one day, I don't start to feel insecure. And that's why, when I go into the bathroom and look into the mirror, just like I did when I was 10, I don't see what I used to see. I don't see someone who was overweight and insecure. Instead, now, I see someone who is unique, fearless, and most importantly, imperfect.